We have always honored the salmon because it has provided us with so much from the beginning, and it's one of the things that for us as a people is we were aware from the beginning that none of this was ours. We were here to protect it. So there were specific things that we were required to do to make sure that the salmon knew that, one, we were respecting them, we were honoring them, that we were doing our part to watch over them.
Before Grand Coulee Dam, our people relied heavily on the river. So much so, estimations of 70 and 80% of our food source was taken from the river. Most of that was salmon. And so when they built Grand Coulee Dam, that changed our lives.
I think it's important to recognize that the Columbia River system is a giant circulation system. You could say that the salmon were once the oxygen that came into that lung, and I guess you could say that the water, consistent with the views of the Indian people, is the blood that circulates that oxygen.
Originally, I mean, from time immemorial, and that's kind of cliche, but we were a salmon people. And when other tribes didn't have a word or didn't know what the name of our tribe were, they would do a fish motion and go like this to their mouth, that we were salmon eaters. And again, going back to the stories I'd heard, seeing the pictures of the June hogs, and thinking how amazing that would have been to be able to do that, to live in that time and be able to harvest those awesome fish.
For untold generations, the Spokane Indians were beguiled by the falls. The central feature of the Spokane region was the falls, and the Indians' paramount experience was standing at the base of the falls amid the water and the salmon. In the river, the Spokanes were touched by the refracted light of the sun radiating through the spray of their falls. It is a romantic and historically accurate notion to imagine that the Spokane River, with its numerous falls and turbulent rapids, was a river of rainbows, illuminated by light refracted through the perpetual mist surrounding the plunge pools of its falls, or by the spray created by wind gusting through its innumerable rapids. L.P. Beach, a cadastral surveyor who mapped the Spokane River in 1862, recorded in his field notes that at Little Falls is a large salmon fishery. The Indians put up at least 250 tons, that's 500,000 pounds, folks, of dried fish during the fishing season. Bryant and Parkhurst in 1950 reported that as late as 1936, quote, Chinook salmon still ascended the Columbia River to spawn above Golden, British Columbia.
I was born in 1931, so when I was 7 years old, we went over to the mouth of the Tum Tum, and that's where we'd catch the sockeye salmon. We would catch probably 5 or 6 quite easily. Well, they were approximately 40 pounds. They were big, yeah. I know they were just about as tall as me, so we'd always smoke them or just let them dry, and that would be our fish for the winter.
One of the big trade items was the dried and pounded salmon, and you could actually, to give you an idea, you could take a 40-pound Chinook salmon, dry it, and pound it into flour, and you would basically end up with a quart of flour out of a 40-pound Chinook. But all of the protein was still there.
Right here below all this water is a huge falls. People used to come from hundreds of miles around just to come here to get salmon. And we had a special salmon chief. His responsibility was to make sure that everybody did their fair share of work and everybody got their fair share of salmon.
At the end of each day, the salmon chief would divide that day's catch equally among all the families who were present, including members of other tribes and any non-Indian visitors or guests who were present. Estimates of the Aboriginal consumption ranged from about 18 million to 42 million pounds of salmon annually.
The salmon were a keystone species in our region, and the river system depended tremendously on the nutrient load of the salmon. Often biologists talk about the value of a carcass of salmon being partly one of nourishment for people and partly one of biological value. For this region, the salmon were an enormous source of nutrient, both for the land and for the people, and of course for the water.